May the Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus again, in reply to the chief priests and elders of the people in parables, saying, "The kingdom of heaven may be likened to a king who gave a wedding feast for his son. He dispatched his servants to summon the invited guests to the feast, but they refused to come. A second time he sent other servants, saying, 'Tell those invited, behold, I have prepared my banquet. My calves and fattened cattle are killed, and everything is ready. Come to the feast.' Some ignored the invitation and went away, one to his farm, another to his business. The rest laid hold of his servants, mistreated them, and killed them. The king was enraged and sent his troops, destroy those murderers, and burn their city. Then he said to the servants, 'The feast is ready, but those who were invited were not worthy to come. Go out, therefore, into the main roads and invite to the feast whomever you find.' The servants went out into the streets and gathered all they found, bad and good alike, and the hall was filled with guests. But when the king came in to meet the guests, he saw a man there not dressed in a wedding garment. The king said to him, 'My friend, how is it that you came in here without a wedding garment?' But he was reduced to silence. Then the king said to the attendants, 'Bind his hands and feet and cast him into the darkness outside, where there will be wailing and grinding of teeth. Many are invited, but few are chosen.'" The Gospel of the Lord.
In today's gospel, I don't think, or maybe some of us have been invited to very special events where we get an invitation ahead of time and we're told maybe to save the date, and then we have to respond by such a date, an RSVP to make sure, because the person planning the feast has to make sure that there's enough food, there's seats at the table. And if we were doing it during this time right now, if we came in during this time, there'd have to be social distancing to make sure that the number that are invited would be separated from one another, and doing all that neat things. In my whole life, there was only one time where I was invited to go to an upper class moment, and I couldn't do it. It was when I came back from Peru. My classmate, who has since died, was working down in our place in Tulsa, and I asked a provincial at the time if I could go down and visit my classmate, and we were flying on an airline, and one of my sister's friends, who we had known from grammar school, she worked for the airline, and all of a sudden my name was called, and I walked over to the counter, and they said, "You've been upgraded to first class." And after that time, I never flew first class in my whole life. And I was really excited because I heard all these things about it. And then they looked at me and they said, "Oh, we can't give you the upgrade." And you know why? Because it was an upgrade for the employees. And when employees get their employee upgrade, at that time they had to wear, men, a shirt and a tie, or a nice dress shirt, a pair of pants, and regular shoes. And guess what kind of shoes I had on? Tennis shoes. So because I didn't wear my big boy shoes to go down and visit, I couldn't get up to first class. And my friend was really despondent. So I said, don't worry about it. It won't be the last time or whatever if I fly and going through. And I'm thinking about all this stuff because in this gospel today, there is a first part that if we reflect on it, we're summoned by God to his banquet. And he sends us a lot of reminders about what that means to be part of God's kingdom in our lives. The people of Israel, this in the 22nd chapter of Matthew comes right after Jesus enters into Jerusalem. This is the third parable that we're hearing. This is the third week in a row that we're hearing about what the Lord said after he came into Jerusalem. He cleansed the temple, and the Jewish leaders were kind of jealous and wanted to get rid of him because he was shaking the boat too much. And the last 3 weeks it talks about more for the Jewish leaders what it meant to, do you get it that the Messiah is here and you need to respond to that Messiah. Things aren't like they were before. And so today we have that in our own lives. If we think about that, we have those invitations. And when he talked about the king sending out his servants and all that, it could be the prophets, it could be people that we talk to. If we stop and we think and we reflect on, how many times has God invited us to be part of his table, to be part of his community? And then the other part of it that's really kind of important is that when the king sends out his servants towards the end, so the people then don't respond, and for various reasons. And I was going through my own life. Why didn't I do what God asked me to do? I was tired. I didn't think I deserved a break. Or that person did me. We could think of all these things that we could justify ourselves not responding as the Lord has invited us to, because we start from our center versus I was invited and I have a place at the table always. I need to respond. And then in order to understand why at the end, when all the other ones did not came through, we're going, in the cities in the time of Jesus are a little bit different than what we have here. Nowadays, our cities are more like the internal cities, and some of them are more not really the upper class, but in the time of Jesus, the cities in the time of Jesus, all the important, powerful people lived around the plaza, lived around the center, and all the people that served them lived around on the outside. So the Lord sending his servants to those on the outside was a real symbol for the Jewish people, especially the leaders, saying, you guys are all invited, but we're expanding the seating. We got a bigger hall. We're going to include everybody to come. So that's why going out, you got the robbers, the good and the bad, and going back and forth. And I was reflecting on that and how in this time, right now, are we expanding the seating in our lives even though we're limited? Even though we have all these health restrictions, physical distancing and social distancing. How is it that our lives in this pandemic are a reflection of the Lord's invitation to his table to be part of something deeper and something that could make us whole and to cure us? And that's always a challenge because we always have to be careful, we always have to move forward, but yet the call is still there. How do we respond to that invitation? And the poor guy that got kicked out because he didn't have a wedding garment, in the Bible language, the wedding garment symbolizes you're saying yes to the invitation. You got the invitation and you knew it was required. It was kind of like I told you that story about me not getting upgraded. I've been once or twice in my life when I was provincial invited to a very high-class restaurant, and those who have been up there would know that when coats and ties are required, normally if it's a really good restaurant, they'd have a rack of coats so that you could walk in because they don't want to lose your business. So one of the commentaries that I read talked about how this individual, even though he was invited, refused to put on the garment. Or in other words, he just wanted to get in, but he wasn't willing to commit to what the king was asking them to do. And again, how many times in our own life are we there, but not totally? We want to be believers, but it's kind of, maybe not as much as before, or not wholeheartedly. So as we continue on living, our question, or at least my question today is, how has the Lord continued to invite me to his banquet? And indeed, did I really put on my white garment saying, yes, Lord, I understand what you're asking of me, and I'm going to put that into the practice of my life?